Okay, so welcome to week 3, Neuroplasticity. If you haven't joined the previous weeks 1 and week 2, please don't worry because each session is created as a standalone session. I might pop back and make links to previous lessons, but hopefully you'll still be able to engage in this lesson and understand it and learn something from it regardless of whether you've done the previous lessons or not. The previous lessons are on YouTube, so please do pop back and have a look if you've got time. So let's get started. So we're exploring this question, what is going on inside my head? We've looked at different areas of the brain. We've looked at how thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are all connected. And today we're going to look at this big area within psychology that links psychology to science, particularly biology, because it's looking at our brain and how our brain can change, which I'll leave it there until we've explored this a bit further. There is a resource to go with this session. If you've printed it off, fantastic. If you haven't, you do not need it, but it might be worth grabbing a piece of paper and a pen because there are a couple of activities that might require you to write down. If you don't want to get involved in the activities, again, that's your choice. You can just listen. You can partake in the chat. You can make some comments on what we're talking about, but please keep the comments in the chat relevant to the topic that we're discussing. So I'm going to show you a very short clip from a documentary that was, I think, was on Channel 4 many, many years ago, and it was called Extraordinary People. And this particular episode was called The Boy with No Brain. So I'm going to play you this clip. I think it's around about 2 minutes long. It might be a little bit glitchy. You should be able to hear it. But if it is glitchy or anything, that might just be the internet connection. So it might be worth having a look at this after the session and doing this activity if you're joining me live. And if you're on record, you can just pop to YouTube as well and have a look at it. I will post the link in my Facebook group so that your grown up can access the link if you can't watch it with me today. But you can see there, the boy with no brain, just type it in YouTube and it will come up. Okay. What I want you to do when you're watching this is I want you to think about what you can see while you're looking at the clip. I want you to think, what are you thinking? Okay, so remember, cameras can be off, guys, and to keep yourself muted. What do you think when you're watching this? And also, what do you wonder? Do you have any questions that you have as a result of watching this? Okay, so let's have a look.
Scans show that this little boy was born with just 2% of his brain.
That's not bad.
He's astounded doctors.
He has surprised us, through his life so far. And he's completely wrong.
You are one amazing kid, you are.
And astonished his parents.
How he was doing the things he could do, such a small amount of brain, I don't think I'll ever understand him.
He's a complete miracle.
Before he was even born, doctors predicted Noah would be severely brain damaged and was unlikely to survive.
I've never seen babies crying.
It was like being hit with a baseball bat. This is our child's brain.
But somehow Noah defied all the odds. And his family have worked tirelessly on developing Noah's brain.
And I wanted to make sure that he was making use of the best of what he got.
Then something even more baffling was to happen.
Look, his brain has grown. And we had one picture of the little bit on one side. We had this great big brain on the other.
Because everyone was just hugging each other, really. Because it was just so extraordinary. Noah's brain had grown, which it's not supposed to do.
Noah was defying medical understanding.
Every time we see the doctors, they just shake their head. They're just amazed at what he can do.
Leading specialists to question how our brains really work after all. Seeing those scans as a kind of a wake-up call. Noah's case is a message of hope for anyone with a brain injury.
I think he teaches the medical profession that you can't ever know.
What are we going to teach other doctors? Can we learn anything from you, Noah?
Okay. So obviously that is just a little oh,
Scans show that this little
sorry, that is just a little introduction to this episode within this series. So if you didn't manage to listen to all of that or see all of it, like I say, you can pop onto YouTube and have a look. But just give me some of your thoughts in the chat box if you don't mind sharing. What did you notice? What did you see? Was you thinking anything as you was watching that clip? And have you got any questions? What do you wonder? To someone's put. It's really interesting. It is, isn't it? It's fascinating. Extraordinary case study. Yeah, his brain was growing, wasn't it? So hopefully you saw in the scan pictures on the left-hand side, you just saw a little bit of grey on the outside. And then the second picture, you saw more of that grey image. And that was showing that his brain was growing, and that's what we're going to look at today. Yeah. The neural connections, all the different connections in the brain that help us to do things, that help us to think, make decisions, breathe, move our hands, all the things that we do. Yeah. Will his brain keep growing, or did it keep growing? That's an interesting question, isn't it? And one of the things that scientists used to believe was that the brain only grew in childhood. Um, and that at a certain age, the brain was fixed and it couldn't change and adapt. But research in science is actually showing that the brain can continue to change throughout your life, depending on your experience. So that's what we're going to look at today. So this is a very extreme and rare case study of somebody who was born with only a very small percentage of the brain. Don't know if you can remember what percentage it said. What percentage of the brain was he born with? 2%. Well done for those that typed it in super quickly. And then that second scan, can you remember what percentage of the brain mass was there in the second scan? It went from 2% to 80%. Well done for those of you that have popped in the chat super quickly there. 80% well done. So let's move on. If you want to explore that case study in more detail, like I say, you can have a look on YouTube. There's lots of information about that boy online. In the brain, there are specific networks of neurons. So neurons are specialized cells. In this picture, they're illustrated as a circle that send chemical messages to one another to send signals and information around the brain and also throughout the body. They are connected by these signals. They control everything that we do. Everything that the brain does, from daydreaming to making decisions. Now, the total network of connections within our brain is sometimes known as a connectome. So, we're going to have a little go at kind of demonstrating all these different, what we call neural pathways, connecting these neurons together. So, what I'd like you to do, if you've got the handout, if it in front of you, if you've got a piece of paper and a pen, just quickly sketch a very rough image of a brain. If you're not really sure, just do a circle, okay? Doesn't have to be perfect. And what I'd like you to do is I'd just like you to add, oh, sorry, that's the wrong thing there. I'd like you to add some circles. So I'd like you to add in the neurons. So the neurons are illustrated by circles, okay? Just trying to find how I do it now. I can't remember. Oh, here we go. So just add some little circles in the brain. They can be on the outside of the brain. It can be in the middle of the brain. Okay, this is what we're going to just used to represent all the different specialized cells in the brain. Now, can anyone remember how many neurons I said last lesson, if you were with me, we have in the brain? Can anyone remember? Nearly 90 million. Yeah, I think if I remember rightly myself, it was 86 um, million neurons. Okay. So what we're going to do is now we're going to draw lines to connect these different neurons. So I would just want you to connect the different neurons together in any way you want, absolutely any way that you want. Connect them up. Whilst you're doing it, if you was with me last lesson, I want you to think about where those neurons are in the brain. Think about that localization of function that we did last lesson. What areas of the brain are you connecting? So, for example, if I'm going to connect the back of the brain, which is the occipital lobe, this is where our brain processes information we see. If I'm going to connect that to the front of the brain, which is our frontal lobe, this is what makes decisions. Do you think those two parts of the brain need to communicate with each other? What we see and what we think? I think so, because when we take in information in our eyes, the back of the brain needs to process the vision, the sensation, the shapes, and the images, and the front of the brain needs to decide what that information is. Also, we might need to connect that to our hippocampus, which is in the central parts of our brain, which is responsible for memory, because we might need to access our little folder, what's called a schema, of what that sensory information is. So if we've seen trees, for example, before, we'll have a little folder in our mind of what trees look like. When we go to a new park or a new environment and we see a different type of tree, the visual information is going to come in our eyes. The back of our brain is going to see that image and what it looks like. It's going to communicate to the front of the brain to make a decision of what that image is. And that part of the brain might need to go and access that folder of other similar things that it's seen previously. So our schema for trees, and it's all communicating together to decide so that we can recognize, oh, it's a tree. Obviously, that's a very simple explanation. But hopefully you can see that the longer we spend connecting these dots, oh, what am I doing here? I'm going backwards and forwards. The longer we spend connecting these dots or these neurons, it is creating different pathways and different connections in our brain. Okay, you might want to go over the same one twice or three times and make it nice and thick. What do you think that's doing if we're repeating that connection? It's strengthening that connection. So next time that part of the brain needs to communicate with the other part of the brain, it's going to be quicker. Now, does anyone know the speed at which these neurons send signals across the brain? Does anyone know or want to have a guess the speed at which these neurons communicate? You can see I'm making different pathways. Okay. And remember, if you get the answer wrong, that's absolutely fine, because what you're doing is you're actively processing the question that I have asked you. So you are actively activating the different areas of your brain that's needed to answer that question, to think about the answer. So well done for those of you that are giving me an answer. Okay, I'm going to give you a little clue. I'd like you to try to give me the answer in miles per hour. So if these neurons were having to travel a distance of miles, how fast would they get there in an hour? How many miles in an hour? do you think these neurons would be able to travel? I'm just going to give you the answer, guys. 300 miles an hour. 300 miles an hour. And if you think when you're on a motorway, you travel around about 70 miles an hour. And I think on the motorway, you're traveling pretty fast. Yeah? But it's 300 miles an hour that these neurons are sending signals because your brain has to act fast to be able to make a decision about the environment or what it is that we need to think or do. Hopefully you can see there that I've made lots and lots of neural connections. Now, if we was all together, we could compare our connectome, and what we might see is that there are similarities, but we might also see differences as well. And that's because we all experience different things in our life that's going to activate these neural pathways within our brain. So everybody has these neural pathways, and some are similar, but some are different. And that's because our brain is unique to us. It's a bit like a fingerprint. We all have a very unique brain. Some of our brain is built initially from what we have inherited from our DNA. So we are born with some of our brain, but our brain can change over time based on our experiences. And we've talked a little bit about that already. And this is known as neural plasticity. So this is the key term basically we're learning today. So neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change and adapt based on what we do and experience. Okay. So if we have a look at this little image here, you can see that the brain is taking in information from the outside world and all the different areas of the brain are connecting together. When we practice something or we learn something new, your brain grows stronger connections in the areas of the brain that are needed to do that task or that skill. It's like building bridges between different parts of the brain. So our brain, with anything that we do, talking, drinking, communicating, playing football, playing an instrument, doing our maths, is working very, very fast to communicate all the different areas needed for that particular task. Now, the brain likes repetition. The brain loves repetition. It's a pattern seeking device. Like I said, at one time, it used to be thought that the brain was fixed and couldn't change after a certain age. But now researchers are recognizing that it can. And the more we can repeat and create patterns within these neural connections, the quicker the brain can work and the better that we can process the information or do the skills or whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. So we're going to do a little activity now to kind of illustrate this idea that practice builds connections in our brain that makes something quicker and easier to do. So I would like you, I'm going to set you a challenge. If you've got a piece of pen and paper, I want you to draw that image, but wait, you are not allowed to take your pen off the paper and you are not allowed to draw over the line twice. So you can only draw the line once. So I'll repeat that again. I want you to draw that image, but you are not allowed to take your pen off the paper and you are not allowed to go over the line twice. Okay? I'm going to put a timer on my phone because I'm not sure how to do it on Zoom. I need to learn. That's something that I'm setting myself this week, something that I want to learn new. I'm going to set a timer for a minute and I'm going to ask you to give it a go. If anyone manages to do it, you can let me know in the chat. Don't give up. Keep practicing. Okay, so if you did it, brilliant. If you didn't, don't worry. Okay, you might want to keep practicing. I'm going to give you the solution. Okay, so I'm going to give you the solution. Some of you are thinking outside of the box. You're thinking, do you fold the paper? Really excellent thinking. I like your style, but that's not the answer that I was looking for. Now, some of you might have found that easier because you've maybe done similar tasks before, and that's therefore your brain is going to be using that previous information to help you solve this problem. You might have found that really difficult because maybe you've never seen anything like this before. You might have found multiple ways to do it. And that's great as well because you're processing this puzzle and you're activating those neural pathways in your brain to help you solve this puzzle. Now, if you're not sure, don't worry, I'm going to give you the answer. And if you have done it, you could always see if my way is the same or whether it's different. Now, I'm not going to be very accurate drawing this, but this is the way that I do it. So I draw a line at the bottom, I go up, then I do the roof. I picture this as a house. Then I go to do the cross in the middle, up and down. Okay, I'll do that again for you, just in case you missed it. So I go along the bottom and up. Then I do the roof. Then I go down to start the cross, up and cross. Okay, what I would like you to do now, especially if you didn't do it, give it another go. Give it another go. Even if you manage to do it, just try it again for me. Okay, did anybody do it that time that didn't do it before? Oh, that's different from the one you did. So that's 3 ways that you can do it. Wow, fantastic. Okay. Now, those that did it the first time, did you manage to do it quicker the second time after I demonstrated my suggestion? Those that didn't do it the first time, did you manage to do it the second time after my demonstration? Okay, so these are just things I want you to think about. And that's because if the answer is yes, that is possibly because you've activated those neural pathways that are needed in the brain, those different areas of the brain that are needed for this puzzle. So it'll be a part of your visual brain, so the occipital lobe, because we're visualizing the image. It will be part of the brain that's responsible for spatial awareness because we're having to work out the direction of the lines and things like that, which is something called your parietal lobe, your somatosensory particularly. So lots of areas of the brain are responsible. And when you create patterns and you repeat those patterns in the brain, then things become quicker. And if you're still struggling to do it, don't worry, just have a practice again after the session. Sometimes, remember, we it takes us longer to do things that other people might get quickly. And that might be because they've already done something similar. So they've activated these pathways within their brain. We just need to repeat that pattern and repeat that pathway in order to make it easier to follow in the future. So when the neurons in your brain are activated in a particular pattern, it's faster and easier for your brain to follow that same pattern in the future. So when you then go to do that skill again, it becomes easier because your brain can communicate the information quicker because they're used to it. And I would like you to think about this as um like a little bit like a sat nav. Now, I don't know if you've ever been somewhere new and you've had to find your way to that destination. Now, don't think of it as using your sat nav at the moment. Just think about if you're walking from your house to the shop, for example, or you're in a new shopping centre and you're trying to find your favourite shop. The first time you go, it might take you a little while to figure out the route. The more you do that route, it's going to become easier because you're going to remember that route. So, from getting yourself from A to B, because you have repeated that same route to your destination, hopefully over time that route becomes quicker to get to. Now I'm going every week to our central library in the town centre where I live. And I used to need the sat nav. When I was walking, I'd get off the bus and I'd have to have my sat nav on because I wasn't sure of the way. And then over a few times, I then could remember the street names. I could remember that when I got to Cafe Nero, I had to turn left. And over time, after a few practices, I could get from the bus to Central Library without needing my sat nav. And that's because my brain had created those neural pathways and that I could get there quicker. So hopefully that kind of analogy might help you to realize or to help you to understand what I mean by creating patterns to make these things quicker. I'm going to give you another task, okay? If you haven't got the piece of paper, the resource that I've given you, maybe you could use your finger on the screen. I would like you to get one neuron. So these images here, the yellow and the pinky color, these are neurons, those specialized cells that need to communicate with each other in our brain. Please could you get neuron 1 to neuron 2? Doesn't matter which one you start with. Again, I'm going to give you 1 minute. If you make a mistake, take your pen off and start again. Okay, so a lot of people are saying, done it. Brilliant. Well done. Fantastic. 5 more seconds. Okay, so this activity, you are training your brain. Okay, you're doing some spatial navigation, you're problem solving. So you're activating certain areas of your brain here. So what you're doing is you're strengthening these neural connections within the brain. What I'm using it for to illustrate is how if you make a mistake and you go back and start again, you're not likely to make that same mistake again. Now, I know obviously while we're doing this, it's visual. So if I'm drawing here and let's say I go round this corner, oh, I've got to a wall. I'm going to start again. Obviously, if I can visually see it, I'm not going to make that mistake again. But imagine if I cleared my route, I can remember that down here is a blockage. So I'm not going to go that way. So I'm going to try an alternative route. Oh, this is not very neat. I'm going to try an alternative route. Oh, can't do that way. So I'm going to go this way. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to try and clear it and see if I can do it now without making a mistake. Okay, let's have a look. So give it a quick look. Let's see if I can do it without making a mistake. Let's see. Amazing. I did it without making a mistake because I kind of had an idea of the pattern that was happening there. Now, I wanted to do this just to illustrate. Oh, somebody else has done the same thing. Thank you. So we got the same image there. So mine was the blue and somebody else has done the black. So brilliant. We got the same answer. So, this is to illustrate that making mistakes help us to learn and they make our brains grow. Now, I know mistakes can be frustrating, okay? My daughter the other day, she's not here with us today actually, she's spending the day with grandma. Um, but the other day she was trying to make a bracelet and she kind of dropped a little bit in her hands, and it meant she had to start again. And she got really frustrated because she spent a long time trying to get it. It's quite intricate, and she got super frustrated. And I know that can be the case when you make mistakes, but mistakes do teach you how to improve next time. And what she did is she recognized the mistake that she made, and after a while, she didn't do it straight away because she was super frustrated and she had to let that emotion sit. She couldn't do it while she was feeling frustrated and angry because it was affecting her frontal lobe. Because when we're feeling angry and frustrated, the front part of our brain doesn't work. If you remember last week, we talked about the emotional part of our brain and the thinking part of the brain. And once she'd calmed down and once she'd forgotten how frustrated she was, she came back and she managed to do it. And I think that was because her brain had remembered the mistake that she made and she didn't make that mistake again. Now, if we connect that to the biology, the physiology of our brain, what our brain is actually doing, there's something called error detection. When a mistake occurs, the brain's error monitoring system, so we have a part of the brain that detects and recognizes when errors are made. So there's an area of the brain you can see in blue there called the anterior cingulate cortex. This becomes activated, and when this is activated, it signals the brain to pay attention to the problem, to pay attention to the correct outcome. So when we make mistakes, the brain is recognizing those mistakes and remembering them. So that what we can do is we can focus on the correct and the task in hand. So there's something called synapses within the brain. So some of you might be familiar with this when we've got these neurons that I'm talking about that need to communicate with each other. There's gaps in the middle, they don't actually touch. And the gaps is where the signal, the chemical message is sent from one neuron to another. Now, these synapses are strengthened the more that we use them. And ones that are not used are weaker, become weaker. Each time we attempt to correct a mistake or we practice after a mistake is made, then these connections between neurons are strengthened and it promotes deeper learning. So, mistakes are good for learning, even though they feel frustrating and we can get mad at ourselves. Try to remember that those mistakes are helping your brain change and adapt and to learn and remember the mistake and to focus our attention on the correct way. Okay, so neuroplasticity, if we remember, just sum it up, it's the brain being flexible, just like a muscle, and the more we use it, the stronger it becomes. Okay, so we need to use our brain. We don't want to lose any of these neural connections and these pathways within our brain. We want to strengthen the ones that we need in order to do the tasks that we want to do. So I'm going to practice some of these simple tasks that we can do to boost our brain. Okay, so what I would like you to do with your non-dominant hand, that means the hand that you do not write with. Okay, so mine is my left. I don't write with my left hand. I want you to write the sentence, boost your brain, train for gain. Okay, so I'd like you to write that with your non-dominant hand. And it should be tricky. Give it a go. Okay, I'm going to try and do it on the screen, which is not going to be easy, but I'll give it a go with my left hand. Oh gosh. This is super tricky for me. Okay, stop there. You can obviously keep practicing this while I'm talking, or you can have a go at it later. As you can see, mine's not very neat. I mean, I'm actually doing it on a tablet. So if I was to do it with my right hand, it still would be not the neatest. However, hopefully you can see how I actually am doing it quicker with my right hand. Still not very neat because I'm not very good at using this. Oh, that's terrible, that bit, but never mind. At least you can see what I mean in that it was quicker with my right hand. And that's because my brain is used to my hand doing that task. So my brain can connect all the neurons, and the neurons can send that signal quickly to my hand in order for me to write that sentence. Now, if I'm using my non-dominant hand, why is this good for the brain? Because it activates the different pathways of your brain to help your brain to adapt to change. Now, if you remember last lesson, the right side of the brain is responsible for the left side of the body, and the left side of the brain is responsible for the right side of the body. So when I'm using my right hand, quite a lot of the left side of my brain, particularly my motor cortex, which is around about here. Motor cortex is responsible for muscle movement. I need to activate my left motor cortex to help me, sorry, my right motor cortex to help me use my left hand there. Okay. So you're just activating different parts of your brain. So that your brain can learn to adapt. Now, this is really useful because people who have suffered strokes or brain injury, at one time it would be thought that maybe the brain couldn't get over that damage, that trauma. But neuroplasticity research by scientists and psychologists on neurologists into this area has shown that sometimes the left side of the brain can take over the functions of the right side of the brain and vice versa. So the more we can practice using our non-dominant side, we can be practicing and helping our brain to grow in those different areas. So I want you to think about what other things could you try with your non-dominant hand at home over the next week? What could you try? Not just handwriting. What else could we try? Good. So we could do something with a ball. We could throw a ball with our left hand. I don't know if you've ever tried to with your non-dominant hand, sorry. I really struggle. We could catch a ball. Anything else we could try to do this week with our non-dominant hand? Hmm. Okay, we could try to use scissors. Okay, let's not do anything violent, please. Sensible suggestions. You could try eating, yeah, if you got that you using your knife and fork in the opposite hands. That's a really good one. If you cut your food with your right hand, could you cut it with your left? That might be quite tricky. Painting, brushing your teeth, holding things, excellent suggestions. Next time you wave at someone, wave with your left hand and not your right, or the opposite, depending on what your non-dominant hand is. Really good suggestions that I just put on here, brushing your teeth or brushing your hair. So give it a go for me and let me know how you get on next week, or ask your grown up to pop it on Facebook for me. You, some people can use both hands quite well. Do you know what that's called? Can anyone tell me what it's called if you can actually write with both hands? Ambidextrous. Well done. Really good. It's called ambidextrous. Yes. Fantastic. Okay, we're going to do some mental gymnastics now. I'm not going to get you up doing any physical activity, but we're going to exercise our brain using some brain teasers. Have a think. What has hands but can't clap? What has hands but can't clap. Oh, well done. Some of you are good at brain teasers. This took my daughter a while to get this morning. Oh, you love riddles. Yes, that's good. I like riddles too, but I'm not always good at them. The more you practice, the more we can think outside the box. Okay, yeah, clock. Well done. Next one. What gets wetter the more it dries? You've heard these before. I thought I was being really smart putting these on. Amazing, well done. Has anyone got any riddles for me that you've used before at home that you might want to try and see if you can trick me or anything? Has anyone got a riddle for me? I'd love to hear. Pop it in the chat. Okay. If you have got one, I will answer it at the end. I'm just going to move on because I'm conscious of time. Uh, I'll come back to those at the end if you want me to stay on and answer them. I have two coins that add up to 30. One of them is not a 10p coin. What are the coins? You guys are good at these. You guys are good at these. Well done. You're only allowed two coins. Okay, I am going to move on, guys. So sorry if I've not given you too long, if I've not given you enough time to do that one. But one of them is a 20p and one of them is a 10 because I only said one is not a 10p. I didn't say that the other one couldn't be a 10p. Okay? So well done if you got it. Well done if you got it. Okay. Next one. The answer is 144. What's the question? If the answer is 144, what's the question? I'm asking you, what's the question? So you come up with a question where the answer is 144. This one's not a trick. Okay, so we've got somebody saying 100 add 44. Brilliant. Any other questions? Any other questions that could create the answer of 144? 12 squared. That's 12 times 12. Brilliant. Can you create a really long equation? Create me the longest equation you can where the answer is 144. Ooh. Might have to get my calculator out to check your answers on this one. Okay, I am going to move on from this one, actually. But if you can create a really long equation by the end of the session, I will add it up and I will see if you are right. Okay, so really for that one, you can have lots of different equations. One add one, add one, add one, add one, add one, add one. We'd be there for a while doing that one, would be absolutely, that is true. But notice how you all come up with different ways of thinking about that 144. Okay. Now, the purpose of these types of mental gymnastics is it encourages cognitive flexibility. Cognitive is the way we process information in our mind, and flexibility is that our brain can change the way that it thinks about a certain task. So you have to think outside the box, you have to change and adapt. So by doing things like this, it's really good to help our brain make different connections, different neural pathways. So well done, guys. Excellent. Right, for this one, you're just going to need your hands. So get your hands in front of you. What I would like you to do is I'd like you